Welcome to the OpenJ9 community call. If you haven't already, please put your name and company affiliation into the minutes. I'll start with asking if anyone has anything high priority to bring up before we get started. Otherwise, we have a lightning talk scheduled. Hung, are you ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, you can take over the screen sharing and
Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the JEP 371, which is hidden classes. So this new JEP is introduced in Java 15, and OpenJDK is going to deprecate the non-standard API, some misc unsafe define anonymous class, and it'll be it is going to be removed in future releases. So they introduced a new API called define hidden class in method handles the lookup. So if you wanna if your code is using unsafe define anonymous class to define class at runtime, you'd better replace that with this new API define hidden class in order for your code to work in future releases. So let's look at this API. It's pretty simple. So the first parameter is the array of bytes. So it's a class bytes represent it's the class file bytes of the hidden class that is going to be defined. And the second parameter is a boolean. So it tells the JVM whether to initialize the hidden class or not. So the third parameter is optional, so you can pass in either an estimate or strong into here. So I will talk about these two options in next few slides. So this API will return a lookup object on the newly created hidden class. So there are a few features that a hidden class is different from normal classes. The first one is non-discoverability, and the second is access control nest, and the third one is lifecycle. So I go into these features one by one. So the first one is non-discoverability. So hidden class is intended for use by framework that generate the hidden class at runtime. So it is not supposed to be used by bytecode outside the framework. So the name of the hidden class is generated at runtime by the JVM. So which means that it cannot be discovered by using the class name. So for APIs like class.forName or class loader.load class name. So this API takes the class name and normally return you the class, but for hidden class, those APIs cannot find the class find the hidden class for you. So also the hidden class cannot be used directly by bytecode of other classes. So the only way to use the hidden class is through the class object itself. So if we look at the API, so it returns the lookup object on the hidden class. So if you call lookup class on this lookup object, it will return you the hidden class object. So you can use the hidden class from there. The second one is access control nest. So access control nest is introduced in Java 11 by JEP 181. So a nest is a group of classes that has mutual access to each other's private members. So in one nest, one class serves as the nest host and other classes are the nest members. So the nest host will have a nest member attributes pointing to the members in the class file, and the nest member will have a nest host attributes pointing to the host. So the nest class belongs to is determined statically. So those attributes are in the class file. But for hidden class, it can join a nest at runtime. So you can pass in the option nestmate to the define hidden class API. So if we go back, yeah, it's this option. So if you pass this option to the define hidden class API, the hidden class will join the same nest as its host class. So the host class is the class in which that invoke define hidden class. So if the host class is a nest member or nest host of an existing nest, so the hidden class will join the same nest. So if the host class not belong to any existing nest, so the host class is in its own nest. So the hidden class also join the same nest. So the host class is the nest host, and the hidden class is the nest member. So another thing is the life cycle. So hidden class may be needed only for a limited time. So there is no need for the framework to retain them for the same lifetime as a normal class. So by default, hidden class will be unloaded once they are out of scope. So the hidden class can be unloaded individually by the GC. So this gives us a memory footprint saving. So if we're done with the hidden class, the GC will unload those classes. So if you want your hidden class to have a same life cycle as a normal class, you can also do that. So you can define the hidden class by passing the option strong. So yeah. So it's this option. So with option strong, the hidden class defined will have the same life cycle as the normal class. So GC will treat the hidden class the same as the normal class under the same defining class loader. So hidden class is not really loaded by any class loader because the class file or class bytes are directly passed in. So but it will have a defining class loader. So the defining class loader of a hidden class is a class loader of the host class. So yeah, it'll be registered under the defining class loader. So once the defining class loader is unloaded, the hidden class together with other normal classes under the same class loader will be unloaded if the hidden class is a strong hidden class. So there are other noticeable changes to the users with hidden class. So unlike unsafe anonymous class, hidden class does not support constant pool patching. So the existing API unsafe defined anonymous class can take a constant pool, can take a array that could that you can use that array to patch the patch the constant pool of the unsafe anonymous class, but hidden class on hidden class you cannot do that. So the JEP says it is not a goal to support all the functionality of unsafe anonymous class by hidden class. So one example is this one, constant pool patching. You cannot do constant pool patching anymore. So the second one is final fields in hidden class are not modifiable. So regardless of the access flag of the final fields in the hidden class, you cannot modify them. You will get illegal access error if you are trying to modify those fields. by any kind of setters. So another difference is that GCL code in Java 15 and up are using hidden class to define Lambda classes, which means the classes from Lambda meta factories. So all the Lambda classes are becoming strong hidden classes. So in lower release, in earlier releases, they were using unsafe anonymous classes. So that's the difference you may notice if you upgrade to Java 15. Yeah, so that's everything. Any questions?
Hang, I have a quick question. Besides Lambda, the Lambda use case, what other use case can we use hidden classes for?
So I think you can use hidden class as in proxy classes. So you can use hidden class to define some to use as proxy classes to implement some proxy interfaces. That'll be another use case. I believe the main goal is to of this JEP is that OpenJDK want to remove the non-standard API unsafe define anonymous. So for any code that is using that non-standard API, you should change your code to use the hidden class.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Hey, Hung, I have a question. You said the SendMisk anonymous class support will be removed. So, but things which are currently using constant patches, how will they be supported if those things are no longer being used?
The question is, I don't know. I don't know the reason why unsafe anonymous allows you to do constant patching, but at least the JAP says that they don't intend to support constant patching on hidden classes. So I'm not sure whether they will come up with some other solutions for constant patching. So yeah, but it's not supported by this JEP.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, thanks, Hung, for presenting this.
Okay.
The recording up onto YouTube so everyone can take a look there who wasn't able to attend today.
Okay, I'll stop my sharing.
I'll just take over. Okay, we have nothing else scheduled for lightning talks, but we have a bunch of candidates. Jason, is null pointer exception messages still a work in progress?
The part one just be resolved last week, so I'm planning to submit the part two hopefully soon, then I can do the talk.
Okay, sounds good. And then the unsafe non-volatile memory, I assume that means that's the foreign memory access, Babneet. Does that make sense to you?
JEP 383 is foreign memory access, that's right.
What was written was unsafe non-volatile memory JEP, but I assume that refers to the foreign memory access.
There was
Actually,
another step we did in I think the 14 timeframe that was Mike Zhang worked on it. I don't think it's I don't think those are the same thing.
Okay, I was looking for the JEP that matched and I didn't find anything. So did Mike present something?
I don't believe so.
So maybe we could ask him to present at an upcoming talk, upcoming call.
I can organize that with him.
And I'll try again to find the right JEP number.
I think it would be 352.
Thanks. Okay, take a look at the user raised issues. So there's a issue I opened about Xlog. OpenJ9 has long had an Xlog command line argument, and Hotspot introduced an Xlog command line argument, and they're not compatible. So if you're switching from Hotspot, or you set the environment variable Java options, which OpenJ9 now understands, you could end up not being able to start OpenJ9 if you have an Xlog parameter coming from Hotspot. So I've written up a proposal for what we can do to deprecate the OpenJ9 Xlog option and replace it by a different option, and maybe add some compatibility for the Hotspot option. So anybody who has comments on that can respond in the issue. And then there was a bug raised for dump all threads on thread MXBean. So something we need to take a look at for the next release. And I think that's the only two new ones in the last week. So a reminder about help wanted issues. If you have an issue that's simple that a beginner could work on, you could tag that with help wanted or beginner, and then please leave it sit there so that somebody can pick it up rather than resolving it yourself.
So on the help wanted front, I opened a Bugzilla with Eclipse to add the Hacktoberfest topic to our repo to hopefully attract some interest in helping move the project along. Dan has given his +1 on it, and hopefully Eclipse will act on it now.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Trends dashboard. Oh, there it is. So OpenJ9, Hotspot. Seems we're just continuing along around the same rate. Maybe a little lower than it was earlier in the year. A little bit of uptick on Java 15. I don't know if anybody wants to see anything else or has any comments. Otherwise, we'll move on. So for the 0.22 release, there was a request to do a release retrospective because of the delay we had because of the issue related to one of the new features in Java 15. Not sure we have all the people on the call that we want to have to do that, so I would maybe defer it again until next week. I wrote down a couple of points. Does anybody have any comments about that today? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next release, 0.23. We did our milestone 1. We're working on milestone 2. The triage has mostly been done. Andrew, did you have any comments about that?
I've got to check on the JDK 8 ones out to resubmit. But apart from that, only the 2 issues are raised. The rest were known issues.
Yeah, so I didn't see anything concerning. One of them looked like could be a machine problem. Just is trying to start another JVM and it couldn't. There's not enough information there to say why it couldn't, but since that doesn't normally happen, I'm going to assume the machine was out of memory or something.
Right. Okay.
I can't remember what the second one was. Oh, it was AArch64. So I asked the person.
Yeah, I raised that because it was a crash. So, which I've not seen before.
There were a number of those that occurred before. I don't know if it's a dupe of something we've seen, but
okay.
Kono-san, I've asked to take a look, and That's an early access build anyways, so we'll see what the response is on that.
Yeah, I'll check the JDK 8 ones after this meeting, the ones I had to rebuild.
Okay, thanks. And then there's still things in the milestone plan, so I'll bring that up. The VM state 50080, that actually occurred again last night, and we have some diagnostics with a core file. I did find a couple of duplicate issues, one of them saying that we couldn't proceed without a core file, so we do have one now.
Yeah, I think that was one that I was looking at. It's an assert that's firing, and I'm increasingly convinced that the assert is overly aggressive. I think that the code can survive that. It's basically a compile time resolve from the JIT that's failing to return a class, and it's the VM's prerogative to not return something. And I think the code is just being a bit pessimistic. So I'm going to look at it again this afternoon, but I'm hopeful that I can work around that and not have to actually understand why it wasn't resolving. I think it's just we have to gracefully handle it not being resolved.
Okay, so we'll have to make a call whether to defer to the next release or put in a late fix for that. We do have until the 20th, because that's when the OpenJDK release is supposed to occur with all the security fixes.
Yeah, I'll have a look at it. If I am going to make a fix, it will be quite conservative, so I'd say it probably will be safe to put in. So I'll have a look at it and discuss it with a couple of people this afternoon once I've had a look at that core file.
So I know it's something that doesn't occur very often in the OpenJ9 builds, and I'm not sure how much triage happens at adopt in the nightly builds. Does anybody look at the nightly builds at adopt?
What are you after? Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Does anybody look at the nightly builds?
We do, yes. We do, yep.
So I don't often see any new issues raised or comments added to existing issues. Does that mean the nightly builds are just usually green?
Well, recently we've had a bit of instability, so we don't always get to looking further down the test case failures. We more concentrate on major build issues or the test not executing, because that's our priority at the moment.
So if we were seeing something like this assert in the nightly builds that adopt, it's possible it would go unreported?
Which one's that, sorry?
It's the first one in the milestone list, which hopefully you can see on your screen.
VM build failure.
Yeah, so it's an assert and it's got a VM state with that particular number. It was reported a couple of times from the adopt builds, and we did see it last night in an OpenJ9 build. But I'm wondering, we seem to mostly get things like this reported when we do milestone builds, and they don't seem to often get reported from nightly builds. So I'm wondering how often these things occur at adopt where they don't get reported.
I think it's fair to say we don't have a policy to add to an existing issue every time we receive that same failure.
So I wonder if we could change that policy, because it's important to know how often something fails in order to make it a higher priority to look at it.
So with something along the lines of what used to be known as a problem tracker attacks on that sort of analogy, where an issue gets seen once, so we create a regular expression that matches it, and every time it matches in the future, it gets lumped into the same box that can be viewed on the web page. Have you used problem trackers before?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure the problem trackers that we have work particularly well to find out the frequency of a failure, but I do understand how things get lumped in.
Well, I was just thinking, if Shelley's working on auto triage functionality for TRSS, perhaps you could have a conversation with her about what precisely your needs are about, and whether or not her auto triage could fill that, or whether or not something needs to be added or changed. so you can get what you need to identify and fix issues.
Yeah, I guess we don't have Shelley or Len on the call today.
No.
So I'll bring that up. Yeah.
So, Peter, short term, if suppose I were triaging, I already look up to see whether or not an issue has already been raised. So it's just, once I've found it, I could just stick in, I've seen this again, if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, and I don't think that needs to continue. If something's happening every night, you don't need to make a comment every night. Just a comment saying this is happening every night, in every build.
Yep.
Just so we can get an idea of the frequency, because something that happens, once every 6 months is not going to be the same priority as something that happens once a week.
Mm-hmm.
You might get more information in terms of a short-term fix, as Simon mentioned. You might find more information going forward in the triage document. I mean, we don't always note when we see an issue for the second time, the third time, the fourth time, but we also do many times mention that, hey, we've seen this issue before, and here is the issue number registered against it. So just like a control F through that document might find several instances of the same issue. Are you aware of the triage document? Do you have access to that?
I have seen them for milestone builds, and Andrew opened some triage issues at OpenJ9 this time.
No, we have, in terms of the nightly builds, whenever the team is doing a regular triage of nightly builds, we usually put the triage results, or at least a portion of them, in a Google document, which
I think we should maybe step back a second, because we're not regularly triaging test cases at the moment.
Correct, but it might contain some of the information he's after.
It might do it. Is this failure a JT Rage test, or is it functional or different test case? Which suite is it?
I don't know that it's tied to a particular suite. The last one happened building the JVM. I'm not sure if they happened doing that. And I'm not talking about this particular failure. I'm talking in general.
All right.
Because what happens is an issue will get opened. We do a milestone build, an issue gets opened, but we don't know what kind of priority to treat that as necessarily without information about how often it occurs.
Yeah, I mean, what's the word I'm looking for? The view that you've expressed you've seen, that's a word for that, not what it is. You typically see more test issues raised during milestones is because we focus on milestones. We don't necessarily focus on nightly test triage. That's the sort of strategy going forward really is for TRSS to do that. And I know Shelley has, as Adam referred to, the auto triage feature that Shelley's team are working on. Because we typically have sort of higher priority problems like builds failing or machine issues or infrastructure problems, etc. So I'm just trying to determine what reliance you think OpenJ9 has on nightly test case triage.
If I may, I don't think it's so much a question necessarily of strictly the nightly triage, but it's more that we need to know how frequent an issue is, right? Like, so in investigating this failure, right, there weren't very many occurrences in the defect. And so it's going to be given a lower priority than something that has a large number of occurrences. And the fix strategy that we'll take for a particular failure will also be determined a little bit by the occurrence, the frequency of occurrence, right? If it's blowing up all the time, we can make a more aggressive, more risky fix because it's worth it. If it's a once in the blue moon kind of failure, we tend to be a bit more conservative about what we're going to change. And so even if it's within the milestone build or the time surrounding the milestone build, some indication of prevalence, if somebody is doing the look over those issues or those test results, would be very valuable to ensure that things that are a problem for adopt can be prioritized by the OpenJ9 project and we can get them fixed so that things keep flowing.
So has that problem not been seen at ci.eclipse? Presumably.
So I think there was one occurrence last night, right, Pete?
Yeah, very infrequently, but I think it was reported a number of times at adopt before we ever saw it at the OpenJ9 CI. And so anything that happens at OpenJ9, we're going to see that, and we're going to report the frequency, and we're going to get somebody to look at it if it's happening often enough in the builds. But if it only happens at adopt, people who are looking at it might try a grinder internally or at the OpenJ9 CI. They can't repeat it, and therefore it gets no priority to fix.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just be wary that. Sorry, quickly. Yeah, we periodically will be looking at issues that we see in test cases, and we'll come across a problem. And if we see a problem, we're not going to necessarily ignore it and not raise an issue. So we'll raise an issue. But with that ad hoc test, nightly test triage, you can't really rely on it for what the purpose you want from what you've expressed there. I guess what we need is probably Shelley's input. Unfortunately, she's not here.
Yeah, and I will bring it up with her.
Yeah.
But even infrequent triage that says, hey, we're seeing this a lot, would be better than an issue that gets opened and then never updated again.
Yeah, I've not seen that one before, to be honest. But
and it wasn't. This discussion was not related to that particular defect. It was just in general.
Yeah.
At the risk of going over the same, treading the same ground over and over again, at least with a problem tracker style thing, you could sort through the issues that affect the largest number of tests. So if we had this data, then we could query it. I mean, copying and pasting the links into these issues might give the person working on the issue a sense of how common it is, but they're not necessarily going to get that sense from looking at a large swathe of issues. So ideally, you need some way to sort these things by the number of test failures affected. Is that a fair statement to make? I'm trying to pin down what kind of functionality you need here.
I guess that could be useful, but right now, if we see something's fairly frequent, we'll add it to our milestone, and that'll make it a priority for somebody to look at it for the next release.
Okay, so right now you're not necessarily looking for a programmatic solution. You're just saying if and when we do triage, you'd like us to be more active in updating the issues here and not so much in that Google document that I mentioned a minute ago.
Right, because I don't know that anybody at the OpenJ9 project is necessarily aware of those Google documents or goes and looks at them every day in order to find out which defects are the priority.
Well, that's fair.
Whereas if something is updated in the OpenJ9 issue, that's going to call attention to it. People will see that and realize that, hey, this is important.
Okay, so each time we see an old issue, again, when we're doing triage, you'd appreciate us just copying and pasting the entire link. Is that going to be useful, or just some kind of incremented value? I just don't want to fill these things with spam if it's not necessary.
So a link to the failure, if it's the same, is probably good enough.
Okay.
And then somebody can follow that link to get more details. But if
the
original report,
Jenkins links will expire after a while.
That's true. I forgot. Adopt doesn't keep them very long.
Well, the TRSS links, I'm told, don't expire nearly as much or at all. I forget what the rule is.
Yeah, but, if you point to the one with the database entry, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that, or even just saying, oh, we've seen this. Even if there is one, if you put an example link in, and there were a dozen other occurrences or a bunch of other occurrences or something, right? Like, it's not like we need every link. It's just to know approximately the frequency, and then some kind of pointer to where we could pick up one of the latest diagnostics to be able to just see if we can make progress if we're waiting on core files or other information.
Okay, sure. When we're doing triage, that sounds like a reasonable thing to ask for. I don't think we're doing active nightly triage right now, though. So
yeah. And it's within reason. So if something fails every night, just saying this is failing every night is probably sufficient. We don't need to have every single link added in.
Fair.
Okay, so looking at the other issues in this list, I'm thinking the finalize override and the test cleaner issues probably need to be moved out. Andrew?
Yeah, I expect that they will move out. I'm going to have a discussion with Henry on those today. I think that they're timing related with regards to the GC, and I think that I don't think that there's been anything that's materially changed in that area of the code. I'll double check with Henry, but I think they'll move out because any fix is likely to be fairly high risk.
Okay, the next one, the shared classes workload, I expect is going to move out. I don't think it happens very frequently, and nobody's been looking at it. The AH64 issues I'm not sure of, but given their dates, the first two were raised a long time ago. It looks like they've been deferred before, so I expect they'll be deferred again. For Java 15, we didn't even ship Java 15 for AH64. But I suppose if the builds look okay in the milestone 2, we could put it out as an EA release for this release. Updating OpenSSL. There is an OpenSSL H. I opened an issue at Adopt. Andrew, I don't know if you had opened one. I didn't find one.
So there was one already, but it was focusing on Windows and Mac, and then it was trimmed to just Windows. So I opened a pull request to update the other platforms.
I always get confused on the platform aspect of it because the binary only gets bundled and packaged on Windows and Mac.
Yeah, so what we do at OpenJ9 is it's only bundled on certain platforms, but we build against that source for the rest of the platforms. So I just updated all the platforms to use the latest to build against.
So basically the get source parameter needs to have the right value.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Will Parker has been working on that update at Adopt.
I don't know that it's important to do that, but
is the version number that's picked up through get source something that's controlled at Adopt? I thought it was integral because we just use OpenSSL equals fetch, doesn't it? Doesn't that automatically pull it down?
No, you have to say which one you want. It's not controlled by OpenJ9. You have the Adopt would be saying which version it wants to pull down.
Okay, I'll double check it, but I think we'll manage to do all the search and replaces for that, so hopefully he's caught that. I will double check it though.
Okay, thanks. The test mismatch issue. So we did close one of those because we fixed the bug that was blocking our last release. This one seems to be a timeout that happens on internal machines. I'm not really sure what to do about that. It seems our internal machines don't have enough resources to run this test. I don't want to exclude the test because it caught an important bug. But that means it's going to continue to fail in the internal testing. And then finally, we have a pull request to go into the release. We're just waiting for some internal testing to finish. That'll probably go in later today or tomorrow. Anybody else have comments on the milestone plan or anything else for this release? I'm not sure what this issue
just for the record, Adam Brusso has a PR into us to make that change for Mac as well for that parameter. So it will be bumped up to 111H as soon as I integrate it.
Sounds good. It doesn't have to be done for this release, but I don't think it hurts to do so. So either way.
Yeah, I think we've already bumped up Windows, so it would be silly not to do this one as well.
Okay. Right. So we are running the ARH64 functional testing at Adopt now. Len mentioned on another call that there was at least one failure, but it seemed to be an infra issue, so that was under investigation. So I'm assuming that means there aren't any functional issues to raise against ARH64. I suppose it's something we should look at to see how green the builds are. But Andrew, I guess that would have been included in your triage for M2?
Which one, sorry?
The functional testing for ARH64? Do you think it got included in the M2 builds?
Yes, it did. ARH64 definitely was.
But the functional testing, we'd have functional testing for ARH64, but no other platform. So
I'd have to look at TRSS to, if you look at TRSS link to check.
I'll check, or you can check, and we can communicate on Slack after the call.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, JIT server deployments. Is there any updates anyone wants to bring up for that?
So we had a meeting yesterday, maybe Andrew can talk about it, but the outcome of that was that we need an end-to-end user story. So basically we need to detail the usage model.
Yeah, so Raghu has agreed to go away and write up that story. We've scheduled another meeting for 2 weeks, so that'll be October 20th, and the discussion will continue then. I think once everybody's happy with the user story, then we can come back to the specific contributions. I think the concern was just around making sure we have a vision for how this stuff will be make JIT server easy and consumable for end users, and Dan and others wanted to see the plan rather than just individual building blocks as they're contributed. So I think there's going to be a good discussion on that in 2 weeks.
Is this something that needs to go into the OpenJ9 repo, or is it something that could go into a different repo?
I think where we're going to host it depends a little bit on the user story and the components that are going to be required. I suspect it may well end up in another repo, but I'm not certain of that yet. I think it'll be decided by the committers once we've kind of got that big picture and see some of the complexity of the things that are being contributed.
Okay, sounds good. An Adopt update. Does anyone have updates for Adopt? I don't know if this has been updated since last time. I don't think it has. And then machines. Doesn't look like this has been updated either.
I just added the infrastructure issue number. There's not really much to report. They're still offline. I think Raj has had time to investigate. I did a quick Google, but I can't figure out why they're not connecting.
Okay, but since there's nothing else here, it means we don't have any other issues at the moment?
Correct. As far as I know.
The space issue got resolved, do you think?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, any other business? Babneet, did you want to bring up anything about the OpenJDK method handles?
I think I've added the update in the Google Doc. It just says that testing is feasible for sanity functional and for a few cases such as special system. It may be once a week. And as we enable it for all platforms and all JDK versions, Adam would need to determine if a farm can handle the new testing load, since it will increase the number of build jobs by a factor of 2. So this, I think, summarizes the update for OpenJDK method handles.
Yeah, so at OpenJ9 nightly builds, we do have capacity to run additional testing. but I'm not sure how much capacity, and it might depend on whether we get updates for various versions of Java, like updates for Java 11, Java 8, etc. Because then we'd run an acceptance build for those. But we can certainly try enabling all the testing for different versions of Java for this when you're ready, and see how much we can accommodate every night.
Yep.
I'm sure we can accommodate some of it.
Yep.
Devin, anything on CMake?
Yeah, the AIX default PR is merged. I just have the one more PR for Windows that I opened up this morning, and that gets us everything ready to switch over to default, I believe. Just running the last tests now. And yeah, I've been still hammering away on some of the ZOS stuff.
Sorry, what was the update for Windows?
There's what I believe is the last PR to fix some of the build issues there. Opened it this morning, and then running the tests to make sure that it's all good to switch over the default.
This old minutes mentioned path length. Is that resolved?
Yes.
Okay, we already talked about Helm charts. There's microjet. There's the regular meeting. Anything else that needs to be mentioned for that?
Nope, just regular meeting coming up tomorrow.
I don't think we have Daryl, so nothing about ARM32.
Yeah, I think we'll have to try and chase that one soon. So I don't know. We'll have to see if we can get Daryl on the call here next week, or if we're going to have another meeting.
Well, I guess there's no urgency to removing ARM32. We're just talking about deleting some code that nobody's working on.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why it's urgent to delete it?
I don't think it's urgent to delete it. I think it's just been dragging on the agenda for a while. So if nobody's really serious about doing anything about it, then we should take it off the agenda.
Is anything about docs? I'm not sure if anybody's on. Adam, do you know anything about the docs issue? About the automation? Oh, looks like Adam's gone. Not resolved anyways. And then the project creating a profiling agent. Any updates for that?
The students are making steady progress in their own repo. They still have a little ways to go before they have a sort of minimum viable prototype. So hopefully towards the end of the month, they can present to us, will be my hope.
Okay. Anybody have any other business they want to discuss? No. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.